Thanks, Al. A very good morning to everybody. Morning. Still everybody very good. My name is Tieman. I'm the founder of LB International Logistics Consulting and Research Firm. I'm also half a professor, so I'm also a adjunct professor at UMP, University of Malaysia, and also adjunct professor at University of Tunggal in Malaysia. So there's half professor standing in front of you, so you can also expect a kind of lecture. So I won't disappoint you in that one. We're living in exciting times. Why do you say that? We had earlier, Europe was the power base, the world powers came of Europe, it went shifted to the US. China, and now we have the Asian Economic Community being the power center of the world. We also see new business models appearing. Quite recently, Paul Polman, the CEO of Unilever, he announced making money is not anymore our main goal, it's about sustainability. We also seen other examples, Shell pulling out of the North Pole, which is great news, I now can take it Shell again. So sustainability is an important factor. Also new business models forces us to rethink how best can we and should we organize our logistics and supply chain. Are our logistics models still relevant? I'm here to argue today that it's time for a new way of doing logistics, Logistics 3.0. So I'll give you some background, where logistics started, some evolution on logistics, and then go into depth what Logistics 3.0 is all about. I'll start off with a quote. The amateurs discuss tactics, the professionals discuss logistics. Who said this? Anybody? Anybody? It's a French guy. He passed away some years ago. Napoleon. Excellent. He was emperor, a French emperor, and he covered a lot of areas in Europe. He was very good in logistics. So, in fact, he revolutionized military organization and training. And today, if you are being trained in the army, you still learn about his tactics. So he won a lot of wars. Unfortunately, at the end he also lost a few. But today he's still the example of a good military logistics. So it started definitely in the military area where logistics started, and then moved to the civil space. And they further accelerated logistics excellence and how best to organize logistics. If you talk about today, logistics mechanized a lot, automate a lot, and ICT plays a key role in modern logistics. So what has changed since? Today we are in the age of innovation. Products are not anymore developed purely by the manufacturers, but they are co-created by the supply chain. So the suppliers play a role, the manufacturer of course, supporting industry, universities, the consumer plays a key role in development as well as the service provider. Also the Internet of Things. We have e-business, big data. Everybody here can be a publisher. They can think something and put it online, something good or something bad. It can take hundreds of years to build up your brand. It can take 24 hours to get rid of your brand. DNA, who are you? Is also for companies, the corporate DNA is very important. So how you differentiate yourself in all your actions and your supply chain. You cannot say anymore that we don't do child labor, but your suppliers do. Right? We cannot say we are sustainable and your suppliers they pollute. And so it's all interrelated. So these new times require new logistics models. There is an evolution of logistics. I talk about 3.0, so your first question is, okay, what is then 1.0 and what is 2.0? But the past is where we are today. So logistics 1.0 is all about cost, is all about efficiency. And still a lot of companies think about logistics, it is all about efficiency. But logistics is more. So logistics 2.0 is about the customer. Logistics 3.0 is something coming, and I think you should be prepared for. It's all about values. Let's go one step back. So what is Logistics 1.0 all about? So Logistics 1.0 is about efficiency, or how Dirk puts this, at the last frontier of cost economics. So what are important factors in Logistics 1.0 are, what are your total costs? Those are the cost of storage, the cost of warehousing, the transportation, and also the physical handling in the supply chain. The logistics service providers are very much concerned about is the effectiveness, utilization of the trucks for transport. So I'm half professor, so I go lecturing a lot. So what we teach our students at the university is this kinds of models in optimizing logistics. So on the bottom, you have the packing density. So we talk about low density. There's bulky items like sand, toilet papers, all kinds of chemicals, bulky items, so low packaging density. On the other hand, we have high packaging density, so the typical pharmaceuticals, cosmetics, fast-moving consumer goods have a high packaging density. Vertically, we see the value density, so low values like toilet paper, sand, high values such as the iPhone, the computers, diamonds, the lady's best friend, and many more products. So if you have put those together, we have three areas. There's on the corner left, we see the transportation and storage focus. So if your product have a low packaging density, low value density, you focus your logistics on how can we reduce transportation and storage costs. If your product is very high density, packaging density, then you want to optimize in handling innovations, such as crate systems for fruits and vegetables you see in the supermarket, and also trolleys, all kinds of things that make handling easier. If the product is very valuable, like such as the iPhone, laptops, a lot of high-tech parts for the automotive and also aerospace industry, you want to minimize inventory, because too much inventory is very costly to finance. So this we are teaching today to our students, and also a lot of the people in the room. This will be a familiar theory for you. But it's old school, right? It's 1.0. 2.0 is where we are at today. Many companies, it's all about the customer. The customer is king. We talk about everywhere commerce. So whatever the customer wants, we will be there. If it's online, we will bring it online. If it's offline, we will bring it to offline. That's whatever you wish, we do. So what the important factors in here, what the customer service is important. We want to maximize customer service levels to our dearest clients. Inventory carrying, so we want to minimize inventory in our supply chain. Critical. We have online, we have offline, we don't want to have multiple inventories. We want to synchronize those and utilize those. Productivity is important. We have big assets, factories, distribution centers. So how do we ensure productivity in our supply chain and in our operation? So what I'm teaching today, also my students, is so logistics optimization. We have the omni-channels, we call that. We have online operation. Online is focused on, we have a high number of deliveries, small shipments, and also many returns. So if you don't like the clothes, it doesn't fit, then you bring it back. On the other hand, we have the offline, the physical shops, where you have a limited number of shipments, limited returns, and also large deliveries. So what you want to hear is virtual integration of all stocks in the network, so that you minimize your inventories. So this is 2.0, right? It must be all quite familiar to all of us. Then what is Logistics 3.0 about? Where everybody is waiting for. Logistics 3.0 is all about values. It's a path towards excellence for your internal supply chain. There's a physical operation within those four walls. Can be your warehouse, can be your factory. Your external supply chain with your suppliers, your dearest customers or your distributors, and the environment. So sustainability is an important factor in there. We developed 8 laws to abide to. It's like a kind of religion. You know? The first law, so the supply chain and environment are integral part of the logistics system. So the environment can live without us, right? But we can't live without the environment. So traditionally, we're looking at the typical model of of getting oil out of the ground or harvesting of wood products. And we take products from the environment and then we sell it and we get money. So that's typical. Our gain is the loss of the environment. But maybe that's too simplistic. Maybe we have to look at more KPIs in our business. So return on human capital. We have people in our business which are important. The founder of the Virgin Group said our customers are not most important. Right? It's about our suppliers. Our employees are most important. If we are good with our employees, they will be good. The customers will come to us. Return on social capital. As a company, some of you here in the room, they employ many hundreds or even thousands of staff. So we also have an important function in social capital. Return on manufacturing capital. So you have a factory or big warehouse, big investments in there. They want to see a return on that. Return on natural capital is that you have a position in the environment. So not how do we pollute the environment or how do we minimize pollution. So how can we contribute to the environment as well. And finally, of course, we have investors, so they also want to see a financial return. So that's law number one. Law number two is about cleanliness. I can sometimes, and I'm also guilty of that, and I look at my desk and it's a big mess. A lot of things on my desk, and I have to agree that if my desk is full with papers, I have less energy, and also probably my work won't be that fast. So if the same as your operation, if you have a clean warehouse, a clean operation floor, clear lines, clear processes, it works better. Efficiency goes up. And so cleanliness is important in all aspects of the operation. Cleanliness of the toilet, hygiene, and also cleanliness of the building and your operation. Law number three, waste, less is more. And so waste is not only a matter of the physical waste in the production process, but also how do we design our buildings, right? There are a lot of ways to design a building, and especially in the Malaysian heat, often going beyond 32 degrees. So how can we design a building that is better able to get it cooler or keep it cooler? So can we not relook at our building design instead of just copying what we have done the last 20 years in the building design? People. Green is also a culture. So also the training, the people you hire, that they also should have a green perspective, green culture, and how they want to do things. So wastage, minimization of wastage starts with the people in the operation. Finally, is also what do we bring in our company? The less inventory, the better. So waste is also looking at inventory. So not inventory in how many units we have, but I always go with an assessment of how much inventory you have in time, right? So how many days of inventory? Because 1,000 paper clips, right, can be run out within a few minutes. But 1,000 BMW 7 Series, that doesn't go out in a few minutes, right? That might take a few years. As a numbers doesn't say anything, it's all about time. Law number 4. Instead of relying on the non-renewable resources, such as oil, gas, the energy from Tieman, with all the respect, we should use the God-given energy, sun and wind. In fact, nature is solar-based. Everything you eat is all solar-based. So why are we not having a solar-based system for our energy we consume as a company? And I'm sometimes frustrated. I talk to a lot of business people here, and they have very big roof spaces on the factories, on the warehouses. If they count up all the square foot they own in Malaysia, it is really a lot. And then they said, well, our energy costs in Malaysia are not as high. So we don't know if we should start with that, right? It is a little bit wrong, I think. You know, if McDonald's menu was £1 for the whole menu, would you eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner at McDonald's? No, you wouldn't, right? So why are we doing it with our energy? How can you say we are green and you have no solar panel on your rooftop? Whereas I'm true, it's a pretty hot country here. You know, I think we have very good performance if you had solar panels on your roof. So maybe it's a good idea if you want to be green and positioned as green, that you start also with solar energy in your business. Water is the only product on life we can't live with. We can live without oil. We can live with other products, but not without water. So also in Logistics 3.0 is all about water treatment. So catching rainwater, and before you give back to nature, it's also treat it that you don't give back polluted. Law number 6 is from push to pull. And so the market requirements should determine how you organize your supply chain. As some of you know, I've been working in the last 6 years academically on the new development of halal supply chains. So we have made a lot of progress on that, so that instead of saying, well, it was nice it was halal at the factory, that you address halal throughout the supply chain, in your logistics, at the distributor, up to your supermarket. The same with organic. It has also already been longer, that organic doesn't stop at the farmer, but it's addressed throughout the supply chain. Green doesn't stop at the farmer, it's addressed throughout the supply chain. So your supply chain is critical, and it starts with the consumer. And when I heard about Shell drilling in the North Pole, I was frustrated. I didn't take it at Shell. So I was very happy, right, that they changed their policy, that they didn't go drilling in the North Pole. Right? So if you know that your supplier of clothes is using child labor, would you buy that clothes? No, you wouldn't, right? If you know that the supplier of this baju, your clothes, is polluting the environment, would you buy it? No, right? So these are important aspects, so that your supply chain starts with the customer, and that all those aspects which are important has to be addressed through the supply chain. So it is all customer driven, so your supply chain is push instead of pull. Role number 7 is based on quality focus. The Germans have a very, before a Volkswagen issue, they had a very much religion about perfection, and I think they still have, because they will solve this crisis very much. So the German way of perfection is almost a religion in all aspects of the business. That is also critical in the Logistics 3.0. You strive for excellence in all aspects. And finally, it is law 8.7 is the importance of continuous education. I know the logistics industry has a lot of challenges, a lot of it's tough to keep your logistics staff. The logistics people that are well trained, they have the luxury of having good employment, so they can choose where they want to work. It's difficult, not always easy to keep good logistics staff. But I think it's important in order to innovate as a company, to keep on investing in your staff, on aspects of logistics excellence, train them on what is inventory optimization, and how can I improve my supply chain. What are the conclusions of my, let's call it a lecture? Is that today's industry challenges, they require new logistics models, and I think a different way of optimization. Logistics, from my perspective, should be value driven. We have seen the efficiency model. We have seen the pure customer orientation. So the road ahead is based on value system. You see already examples like Unilever, and there will be more examples that say we go beyond the cost and customer focus, we go to value systems. So these new business models also requires new logistic models that are meeting the requirements of the industry. So it's a path towards excellence. You can't do it overnight. Logistics 2.0, you have to work with a few quick wins, and then based on the success, you move to new areas where you can improve. So see it as a work in progress. You start off, and it will take many years to get it right. So the last question I want to leave you with is the following, and then after I give you also the opportunity to ask some questions if you have them, is, are you ready for value-driven logistics 3.0? All right, thank you very much. I'll open the floor. So logistics 3.0 is a new concept. So let's start some discussion on this. Anybody? So everybody's doing it. Please. Please, if you can state your name, where you're from, and your question.
Good morning, I'm John Bell from ESP Consult. As an academic, we can challenge you, can't we? We can really say what you're saying is really old hats, just repackaged in new wording, right? But the difference in what you have said is we need to define a new model. But is it really a new model, or is it a new way of executing the model? The new mindset in how we handle the environment, the new mindset of how we manage people. Because really what you're saying is very much the old things coming back into the existing model. For example, we talked about waste and cleanliness. We were talking about waste and cleanliness in Kaizen, in 5S, 20 years ago, right? What we're doing is basically repackaging maybe some of the old concepts that worked into the new model, or the new thinking, but it needs something else. What do you think we need to think about when we are driving this new value chain logistics? What else do we need apart from the concepts in the model?
Thank you. Now, of course, a lot of components we're doing already for many years. So logistics 3.0 is also further expanding or building on logistics 1.0 and logistics 2.0. So I'm not saying that we go away with efficiency, that cost is not important anymore. For what we're looking at is the emphasis. So what is an important emphasis of the operation? What I think as an academic, and what I also see in my consultancy business, that too much focus also in Malaysia has been on cost. As we have been seeing that a lot of logistics service providers changed in manufacturers, so manufacturers are changing all the time. The service provider just looking at how can I reduce my cost by moving to a different logistics service provider. So I think that was a problem in the industry in Malaysia. Whereas I think the logistics service provider can really contribute a lot to the total supply chain, other than just cutting costs in transportation and warehouse. So I think it's time that the paradigm, the perspective of logistics, only looking at from a cost focus, how can we reduce transportation costs, storage costs, efficiencies, and move to more that logistics can really be contributed to the supply chain, and on all the values that is being set by the brand owner, so that the logistics company can contribute to that. So, and I think that sustainability, what is an important theme, should also be embraced by logistics service providers. So one thing is the solar energy. I think there can much more can be done in relation to solar energy. I see very big warehouses in Malaysia. Some of those logistics service providers have cold rooms in there. They're spending more than 100,000 ringgit per month to TNB, although it's no problem for TNB also to survive. But I think 100,000 ringgit per month electricity is a lot of money. And I think we should strive to make the operation more sustainable. And instead of being a net contributor to TNB, I think it should be, for some places that have really a lot of warehouse space, should be a net contributor or net supplier to TNB. You shouldn't be a user of TNB, you should be a supplier. So I think on sustainability, we can really win, make big steps in the industry. Please.
Yeah, I agree with you. My name is Jason. With regards to the presentation, I think it is a tinge of sustainability and also green transformation, which is very on value, waste management. And one of the things that I think is important when we talk about value-driven logistics is what does a customer value? Is that whatever you drive, the customer must value it. If not, there's no meaning for the customer will not pay for what they don't derive value from, right? So anything that we do will have to be based on that basis, alignment basically. And I think one of the areas that are still lagging behind is the alignment between the customer's value and the service provider's value. And there's always a misalignment. KPIs do not match, right? And one of these problems is that if the supplier can be successful, if the customer is not successful, it does not matter. It's not sustainable in a relationship. So I think from that point of view, I think we should look at also how can you do a value creation, value capture, which your customer is willing to pay for. And I think the mindset of industries right now, at least for the industry I represent, is moving towards total cost of ownership. Not just cost of service, but total cost of ownership, which sustainability is also input into it. Because as you know, our end customers are also demanding requirements of sustainability.
Yeah, thank you so much for the comment. I fully agree. So sustainability should be an important KPI of the total value chain, and also therefore should be embraced also by both players and also be part of the contract. So the contract between the shipper and the logistics provider. Any question?
Just to build on what Mr. Pooh said, it's the whole idea of the customers, what do they value? It's also about, you're driving a supply chain, so what do the consumers value? To link it to yesterday, we saw consumers that are demanding free shipping, the commoditization of our industry. How do you then build in these costs? Because these values cost money in this day and age. So, how do you build in, getting back to the drivers, what's going to drive it is, and who values, what is provided. There does need to be a lot of, publicity, if you like, or changing of mindsets regarding what is valuable. There was an experiment that was done, just to draw on an academic background, where some marketers actually got to a supermarket and they put plastic bags out and said, okay, would you like to buy a renewable, reusable bag, or would you like to kill a baby seal this morning? Right? And they put pictures of baby seals dying choking on plastic bags. And confronting people with that sort of imagery does change the values. So in terms of our industry, how do we confront them with baby seals, if you like? That would be, ultimately changing the values if you're going to be value driven.
Thank you. But logistics is sometimes invisible for the consumer, and that is of course a problem. So the consumer isn't always, they don't know what logistics is all about, they don't understand the complexities, warehouses are involved, the trucks, ships and airplanes. So that is the invisibility of logistics, I guess, is one issue, but I think it requires a lot of education. And maybe then the logistics sector should lead this instead of waiting for the customer to knock at the door of the logistics service provider. Any more questions on the left side?
Thank you. Wayne Hunt from API. I think in a lot of ways you're actually preaching to the converted when you actually preach to the logistics industry. I think you'll find that the values the logistics industry have in a lot of instances is very, very high. The challenge is when you go to a customer, the customer wants to hear about all of this, but as long as it doesn't cost them anything. And yes, if your price and someone else's price is the same, but your values are higher, that could be the differentiator for you to be selected. But the big issue is the customer. The customer continues to talk about all these values, but so often in the industry, we see that when it comes down to the crunch, the values change and the final decision is just purely price. And I think, as an industry, I do really believe that we all have in the bottom of our hearts the right attitude and the right aim. I think it really is the customer that you say go forward to the customer. I think you'll find the customer is actually the roadblock in a lot of what the industry wants to do.
Thank you. Yeah, so at the end the customer, this question is willing to pay for, but it's maybe then the responsibility of the brand owner. We have seen a lot of issues of the past years. Also alignment, doing all the work in halal, and the integrity of some products. A question which has a big impact on the perception, and it's easy for the consumers to change brand. And so maybe the driver should be the brand owner to also be consistent and apply the principles he values also with the right logistics partner, instead of talking about the RFQ only about price, or deciding at the end only about price.
You're right. The brand owner is the customer. So it's almost like you need to be getting in front of the customer and pushing these values so that we've got the customer also being educated. I think in a lot of instances, it's actually the logistics provider that's educating the customer. At the top end in the boardroom, they would all agree with you, and they would all be thinking that all of the decisions that are being made lower down in their supply chains is based on those values. But the reality is, the pressure on those people becomes more a financial pressure than any of those other values. And so the further away from the boardroom that you get, these values change very, very quickly.
Please.
Hi, Sasha from Top. I think government and regulators need to play a part, because they need to standardise some of the process so that we can eliminate some of the unsafe practices and so forth. But that's what I think is lacking in parts of this region as well. Yeah. How do you think government and key industry bodies can assist to get that message back up to the customers and the shippers?
Yeah, it's correct to say the US and Europe, you have the government enforcing a lot. In Southeast Asia, currently not, or a lot of aspects not. So a lot of government pressure that will make sure we will fast track the thing, and on these issues which could raise the cost of doing business, the industry might be not be proactive on this. All right, thank you very much. And thank you very much for the discussion. And we will continue further on this topic if you want also in a break. Thanks so much.